While the Traxxas TRX-4 has proven itself to be a fantastic scale crawler, its defender body makes it a bit top heavy, so to help make it more compatible out on the trail we need to add a little weight in the form of these from SamixRC Brass Portal Axles. Personally, I love the realistic look of this defender body, although the weight of just the body alone can make the truck a little top heavy. In order to counteract that, we need to add some weight lower down. In other words, we add unsprung weight, basically weight that's down below the shocks. Any weight that sits above the shocks is known as sprung weight, which isn't desirable. So the ideal place to add some weight is right here, around the portal area. And although there are various cheap options out there, I haven't come across any that seem better than these. The Samix Traxxas TRX-4 brass portal covers are available in various configurations, allowing you to pick and choose your individual components, or you can save a little and purchase the entire set. We have a set for the front portal axles and a set for the rear. I'll leave links in the description box below to both. With either set, each component is constructed of precision machined brass, adding unsprung weight to the front and rear of the TRX-4 for improved weight bias and performance. Unlike other brass parts, these feature a stealthy black finish with chamfered edges that give the parts a stealthy look, yet still providing a touch of bling to your scaler. The front kit incorporates a set of brass hub carriers, knuckles, and portal covers, so in essence we have everything we need to replace the entire portal axle behind the front wheels, while adding additional weight. It's a similar setup with the rear kit, which includes brass rear hub carriers, rear portal drive housings, and portal covers. Again, everything needed to replace the entire portal behind the rear wheels. If the high quality finish wasn't enough already, also included in either package and available separately of course, are a set of Samix scale brake rotors and calipers, which should provide a great finish to the setup and improve the look of your truck. All in all, we are looking at adding a good amount of unsprung weight to the truck, although we'll look at the actual differences once we have the stock plastic set removed. So let's do just that. We'll begin by removing the wheel nut and the wheel, providing access to the portal axle. The only difference between the two front portal axles is where the steering link attaches to them. On one side we have two links, whereas on the opposite side we have a single link, so the screw for one side will be slightly longer than the other. Even so, the process is the same. Remove the single screw to free the steering link, followed by the two screws holding the portal axle to the hub carrier, one from above and the second from below. Being careful to also remove the bushings they also hold in place. With the portal axle now free, it slides right out, bringing the axle shaft along with it. Finally, we'll also be replacing the hub carrier itself, also known as caster blocks, so these can be removed by releasing the three screws holding it in place. With one side released, repeat the entire process on the opposite side, bearing in mind the different screw lengths for the steering link. Also note that due to the position of the front differential being off-center, the axle shaft on one side of the truck will be longer than the other. Finally, we'll remove the hub carrier too. So we now have the front portal axles and hub carriers removed and can begin to replace them with the new brass set. And here's a quick tip. Keep all screws loosely back in their original location so you know exactly where they go when reinstalling. So now we begin on the portals by removing the small set screw so that we can remove their wheel hex adapter. We'll release the axle shaft first by removing three very small screws holding the axle bearing in place, after which we can pull to remove the bearing as well as the shaft and input gear. We'll be reusing these so no further disassembly of this part is required unless you need to clean them of course. Next we need to release the two halves of the portal axle by releasing 6 screws on the rear, followed by 2 screws on the front, after which we can open the portal housing, revealing the output gear inside, which is still attached to the stub axle. All of which we can now release from the housing. Again, no further disassembly of this part is required at this point, unless it's for cleaning, as we'll be reusing it shortly. Finally, remove the 3 remaining bearings, as again we'll be reusing them in the new housings. Now we have all of our parts, we can place the plastic portal axle housing to one side and we'll start installing our new brass housings. We'll begin by inserting the 3 bearings removed from the old housing into the same positions on the new units. It's a good idea to apply some grease to the inside of both halves at this point. A light coating is all that's required, there's no need to pack the unit. Next we can insert the output gear, complete with stub axle still attached, followed by placing both halves of the portal housing together, reinserting the 2 screws previously removed to the front, and the 6 screws on the rear. As we're screwing into metal here, I'd recommend using a little thread lock with each screw. We can appreciate the precision by SamixRC here. Both halves line up perfectly so all screws can be inserted without any problems whatsoever, ending up with a perfectly sealed unit. Finally, we can reinsert the input gear, complete with shaft and bearing still attached, and reinsert the 3 screws to hold it firmly in place, using thread lock of course. All that's left is to replace the hex adapter and lock it in place with that set screw. With all parts lightly greased, we should have free movement. Perfect. All that's left to finish off the complete unit is to add some extra realism with these brake discs and calipers. These line up with the 3 threads within the outer portal axle cover, and using the supplied screws we can secure them into place where they fit with precision. Notice how they are back and away from the hex adapter so will not interfere once the wheel is reinstalled. Now we can repeat the exact same procedure for the opposite side, so remove the hex adapter, input gear, all those screws, and split open to remove the output gear, before transferring all bearings and gears to the new housing, remembering to use thread lock when screwing into metal, and with that said, a few moments later and we're done. Before we reinstall the portal axles though, let's take a quick look at the weight differences. So with the stock portal axle unit, I've left the shaft attached to here, and we'll add the hub carrier as well, we have a total weight of 73 grams. In comparison, the brass SamixRC unit comes to 183 grams. That's a total weight increase of 110 grams. If we place both stock units together, and the same with the new brass units, we've increased unsprung weight at the front by 220 grams. Personally, I'm very impressed with the result. Okay, so let's get these reinstalled. First we'll bolt on the hub carrier with the original 3 screws. These are obviously machined to precision, although also notice the extra 2 threads to one side. These allow you to mount your front shock directly to the hub carrier, and with the accompanying hardware we can release the screw holding the shock and linkage in place, and install one of the provided screws to hold the linkage, and the second to mount the shock directly to the hub carrier, with 2 positions being available depending on how you wish to tune your truck. Anyhow, with the hub carrier installed, we can proceed to insert the axle shaft and position the portal axle in place. You may need to jiggle the axle around a little to ensure it's seated, after which we can reinsert the 2 screws up top and bottom, complete with their bushings and some thread lock of course. And again, everything lines up to perfection, no issues at all. Finally, attach the steering links and insert the correct screw. Remember, the right side with the 2 linkages uses the longer screw, and all that's left is to replicate on the other side, and that's it. Front portal axles now upgraded with quality brass variants, complete with that brilliant metal brake disc and caliper finish. It really does ooze quality, seriously impressive. Reinstall the wheels and we can see the brake calipers through the gaps. Awesome. Moving on to the rear, it's almost the same process as the front, albeit with only minor differences due to the lack of steering linkage. So it's 2 screws in the rear of the hub to release the portal axle. Notice how the axle shaft is a separate unit and not attached to the portal axle like it was with the front. The same process releases the portal axle on the opposite side. Note that the axle shaft on the right is slightly longer than the left. With the portal axles released, all that's left is to remove the 3 screws holding the rear hub carriers in place. Easy. Anyway, just like the front, remove the set screw in order to release the hex adapter, then it's 6 screws on the rear and 2 on the front in order to open the portal axle. The input gear pushes out of the rear alongside its accompanying bearing, and the output gear from inside, complete with stub axle attached. Transfer the remaining bearings across to the new Samix portal housings, followed by both gears and remaining bearings, remembering to add a coating of grease as required of course, and then proceed to reinstall all 6 screws on the rear and the 2 on the front, all with some thread lock. To finish the unit off, add those brake discs and calipers using the screws provided, and not forgetting the hex adapter of course. Again, let's take a look at the weight difference with the rear portal axles. And so by upgrading to the SamixRC brass set, we've gained an extra 85 grams on each rear corner, and together, both stock here, and then swapping to both brass axles, we've increased weight by 171 grams, quite a weight gain. Let's get these back into place. We start with the hub carriers and the original 3 screws holding this in place. Notice these also have the extra threads for the shocks to mount to depending upon your tuning needs. Next we insert the actual shaft with a little jiggle so it sits in the differential nicely before placing the portal axles in position, held in with 2 screws and some thread lock. And finally it's on with the wheels. Upgrade complete. Seriously, I've been left really impressed with SamixRC gear. Not only are the fit and finish great, the looks are perfect too. The brakes and calipers showing through the wheels for example. It just adds that extra bit of realism and shows the attention to detail SamixRC went with here. Yes, there are other cheaper variants available, but if you want the best for your truck, then it has to be with the SamixRC kit. I'll definitely be looking at more Samix parts going forward as the quality, fit and finish make them easy to recommend.